Okay, anyway, in the first meeting last January 30, okay, I think you already have a copy of the recorded discussion on that date. Am I correct?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Okay.
Yes, miss.
Maglisod man kog share screen aning akong PowerPoint. Uy, using my iPad. Naman ko sa kong USB pa ang file. May tatog sa laptop. But anyway, I think we were able to end the discussion last time with the flow of costs without journal entries yet involved. So going back to materials, that can be classified further into two, namely the direct materials and the indirect materials or factory supplies. The same is true with the labor costs. They are also classified into two. We have the direct labor costs and the indirect labor costs. For factory overhead, all the indirect costs and expenses of the factory or plant will be charged to this production element called factory overhead, also known as manufacturing overhead or factory burden. So at the time when materials will be purchased, the classification of materials, whether it is direct or indirect materials, is not needed yet. That is why when you buy the materials for cash, the entry is debit, materials or materials inventory, credit, cash. If you buy it on account, then the entry on the date of purchase will be debit materials or materials inventory and credit accounts payable. So if the requesting department will be sending the material requisition slip or MRS to the warehouse, then that would be the basis. The MRS will be the basis for the issuance of direct materials from the warehouse to the department that requested for its issuance. So, for example, the production head in Department A will be needing material A to that production department, then the entry is debit work in process hyphen, then indicate the name of the requisitioning department. Let us say Department A. So debit work in process hyphen Department A and credit materials. If the requested materials will not be totally used, the excess materials will have to be returned back to the warehouse. So upon returning the excess materials back to the warehouse, then you just simply have to reverse the previous entry made. So you debit materials and credit work in process. If the materials issued by the warehouse clerk to the requisitioning department are considered indirect materials, the entry for its issuance will be debit factory overhead control and credit materials. So those are the entries that will affect the materials account. For the second cost element, which is labor costs, so if the worker whose work can be traced directly to the finished product will be paid, then the entry for that would be debit work in process and credit payroll. If the worker is indirectly associated with the finished product, or his work is not directly identifiable with the finished product, then you consider that labor cost paid to him as indirect labor. So indirect labor, just like indirect materials, will be debited to factory overhead control account. So you debit FOC and credit payroll. Then you will have a separate entry to record the payroll for the period. Now remember, not all companies will have the same date for processing the payroll. Some will have their pay dates every 15th day of the month. So in other words, the salaries shall be paid twice a month or semi-monthly. Others will have the payroll done every weekend, particularly for construction workers or factory workers, while others can also be paid just for once a month. So regardless of how often the payroll is processed or will be paid, the same entries will be made. So debit payroll, which is the same as salaries expense or salaries and wages, and credit accrued payroll if the said payroll has not been released yet through the bank, or no, there is no pay envelope yet distributed to the workers. So the calculation of the payroll will be different from the date that the payroll will be released. So for those whose salaries will be paid through ATM, through their ATM account, then the accounting office of the company will have to send a copy of the net pay or take home pay of their employees to the bank. So the bank will be the one to uh, release that through their ATM. So usually you have to process the payroll in advance, no? Maybe 1 or 2 days uh, ahead of the date of payroll, okay? Just to allow the bank to have enough time also to process it in there, in your respective ATM accounts. But for those who are not uh, giving the salaries through ATM, in other words, they have done the manual processing of the salaries, then a pay envelope or direct payment in cash will be made to the employees on the date of the payroll, like on the 15th or last day of the month. So you debit payroll for the gross amount, then credit all the mandated payroll deductions like sa SSS, Pag-ibig, withholding tax, what else? The PhilHealth contributions. So that would be the cash advances. So those are part of the payroll deductions. The union dues or membership dues, if ever they have a union, and so on. Then aside from the payroll deductions that will be credited, you also have to credit cash equal to the take-home pay of the employees. Then as soon as ma-release na ang paycheck, ang salaries, Then another entry shall be made debiting salaries payable or accrued payroll and credit cash. For other overhead cost items like depreciating the factory assets, you debit that to FOC account, factory overhead control account, and credit accumulated depreciation. So you don't set up an individual depreciation expense account. So the depreciation expense will be considered as a subsidiary account that falls under the FOC account. Then if you pay the salaries of if you have indirect labor costs to be paid, of course, you will charge that to FOC account and credit cash. If, for example, your factory overhead includes the payment of water bills or electricity bills for the factory or plant, then debit that to FOC and credit it either to cash or accounts payable. So you don't use anymore the utilities expense account. Okay, you will place it under overhead. But if the overhead costs refers to the electricity cost in charged to the admin office, then that should not be charged to FOC account, but rather it will be charged to general and administrative expense account. Okay, so remember that we have three classes of inventories held by manufacturing firms, namely materials, work in process, and finished goods. So raw materials are the unprocessed materials that have not been converted yet or have not undertaken the conversion process. So they are extracted from minerals or produced from natural or chemically created substances. So for example, crude oil is considered raw material when it is not processed yet. Wood or lumber is also another example of raw materials. But once they are cut and will be used for processing in the making of furniture, then that wood or lumber will now be considered as direct materials. So the term direct materials would refer to the materials that become part of a certain manufactured product and can readily be traced or identified with that product. So for example, the direct materials used in the making of furniture is the lumber. So lumber is considered direct materials. While in the making of tires, ligid, the direct materials used there is the natural and synthetic rubber. While in the making or in producing the clothing materials, then your direct materials there is the fabric. While the direct materials used in the production of steel products will be the iron ore. So when we say indirect materials, those are the materials needed to complete a product, but the use of which is so minimal or so complex that treating them as direct materials is futile. They may become an integral part of the finished product, but tracing it into the product involves great cost and inconvenience. So these indirect materials are the materials and supplies whose costs are relatively insignificant, making it not cost effective to trace them to specific products. So examples of indirect materials would be glue, nails, sandpaper used in sanding furniture, rivets, lubricants used on machinery, and other items for general factory use. So for the labor cost, which can be classified as either direct labor or indirect labor, only labor cost involved in the hands-on production of goods and services, which are directly traceable to the finished product, is considered as product cost called direct labor. So the distinction between direct and indirect labor is important because it helps to determine accurate product costs. It also will help you measure the efficiency of performance. It will also minimize error in allocating overhead and also ensures better cost analysis for decision making and control. Okay, so what are the examples of indirect labor? So one would be labor employed as supervisors, repair workmen, and inspectors. So their salaries will be part of the so-called indirect labor costs. The amount paid to maintenance workers, such as the workshop cleaner and mechanics and so on. So the salaries paid to them will be reported as part of indirect labor costs. The wages paid to those engaged in purchasing, storing, or those working in the factory office, the timekeepers, and those workers in the canteen, if that canteen is operated by the company. So their wages will be part of the so-called indirect labor costs. So let's have a sample also to illustrate what a particular cost term is all about. So in your book, in chapter 1, you'll find the different cost terms with their definition. So there are different ways of classifying costs. So let's take, for instance, this particular example. You are changing the way that you do production. Instead of making 1,300 units, you will be able to make 1,450 units. The total costs will go from 125 pesos to 140 pesos. What is the marginal cost? So to answer this question, you have to know first the meaning of the word marginal cost. So marginal cost is the additional cost incurred for every additional unit produced. So in this example, how many units were added to production? How many units were added to production? Originally, they produce how many units?
150, Miss.
Again,
Originally, 1,300.
diba, they produce originally 1,300 units. Then, they changed, they decided to make 1,450 units. So how many units were added? Or how many units is the increase in the volume of production?
150.
150 units, Miss.
150, Miss.
Correct. It increases by 150 units. The total cost of making 1,300 units was how much? Total cost of making 1,300 units was
125.
125 pesos. Whereas the total cost of producing 1,450 units is 140
140 pesos.
pesos. So how much is the additional cost incurred here? From 125 to 140, it increases by how much?
15 pesos, Miss.
Okay.
15, Miss.
By the increase in cost, by the increase in units produced. So what is 15 pesos divided by the increase of 150 units?
10 centavos,
10
Miss.
centavos, Miss.
10 centavos.
10 centavos.
Correct. So 10 centavos is the marginal cost. The increase in cost for every unit added to production or for every increase in units produced. Gets niyo?
Yes, Miss.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Another short example. It costs 1 peso and 25 centavos to make each wallet. It costs 1.25 pesos to make each wallet. The marketing cost is 1,500 pesos. And the warehouse cost is 2,500 pesos. What is the total average cost for 5,000 wallets? Gets niyo ang given? Again, it costs 1 peso and 25 cents to make each wallet. The marketing cost is 1,500 pesos and the warehouse cost is 2,500 pesos. What is the total average cost for 5,000 wallets? So in other words, what is the average unit cost for every wallet?
1 pesos and 75 cents, ma'am.
1 peso and 75 cents. How did you get that?
I take into account the marketing expense, ma'am, since it's sort of in the general administrative and selling expense. So I only took 1.25 for the production cost of each unit, and then I added the overhead for 2,500, and overall it took 8,750 pesos for the production of 5,000 wallets. And if you divide it according to the number of wallets, we get 1.75 pesos.
Okay, Angel Louis, why did you exclude the marketing cost?
Because it isn't part of the production, ma'am.
Because it's not part of the production cost. Yon sa pagbawi sa company sa ilang nagasto for the non-production cost?
I think, ma'am, it will be included na in the markup, ma'am.
Included na in the markup.
Price.
Consider first, what is the cost of making the wallet? So when you say cost to make the wallet, it does not only include the production cost, but it shall also include the non-production cost, like your marketing and selling cost, if there is any. Louis, what can you say with that?
That would mean, ma'am, na included ay ang kuan, ma'am, ang sa marketing expense.
Nag-averaging man ka. So you should
Okay.
consider the total cost incurred.
Okay, sige, sige.
Total cost does not only include production cost, but also includes the non-production cost, di ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Ah.
That would get us 2.75, ma'am.
How did you get 2.75?
By adding marketing costs as well as the overhead for production, and then for the total production cost for each unit, ma'am, which would get us 13,750 divided by the number of units, which would total 2.75.
Would you agree with his answer, class?
No, miss.
What is your answer?
My answer is 2.05, miss.
2.05. How did you get that?
1.25 per wallet, so multiplied by 5,000 because that's the amount of wallets we have, which is 6,250. And then you add in the marketing and the warehouse, which in total will be 10,250. That's the total for everything. And then you divide that by 5,000 to get the price per wallet, which is 2.05.
For a while, pila to imong total cost that you say for everything?
10,250, miss.
10,250. Meaning
Yes.
you added both na the production cost and the non-production cost.
Yes, miss.
So the production cost totaled
The production cost totaled 2,500 from the warehouse and 6,250 from each wallet.
katong 1.25 times 5,000.
Yes, miss.
Then plus the marketing cost of 1.5, that brings you to the total costs of 10,
10,250, miss.
and you divided the 10,250 pesos by the total number of wallets produced, which is 5,000.
Yes,
And
miss.
the average cost per wallet is
2.05.
2.05. Do you agree with his answer, class?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss. Yes, miss.
You agreed with the answer of Louis? Or you agreed with the answer of, was it Joshua, no? Ikaw ba ito yung answer later, Joshua?
Yes, miss. It was me, miss.
Okay. So, with whom did you agree the answer given?
Kay
The
Joshua, miss.
2.0.
Joshua, miss.
Louis, you also agree with the answer of Joshua?
Yes, ma'am. I forgot na sipiat ko sa calculation, ma'am.
Okay. So at least you understand now why the answer should be the 2.05, no? Are you calculating the amount, class? Did you get the 2.05 ba as the answer?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Okay.
Yes, miss.
Another follow-up question, but this is no longer related to the given short example. Now, among the cost terminologies that you will find in the book, one of the terms that you use there is the relevant costs and also the irrelevant costs. Try to check their definition. For example, you need to know what alternative are you going to choose. And the alternatives would be to buy the materials from outside supplier or to make the materials by the company itself. So in other words, we have the make or buy alternative. Is it better to make or is it better to buy it from outside supplier? So among the, if you're going to buy the raw material from outside supplier, you need to know how much is the purchase price and who will shoulder the cost of transporting the raw material to your warehouse. So if it is agreed that it is the seller who will shoulder the transportation costs, then at least you know how much will it cost you to buy from outside supplier. But if supposing you consider the other option, the other alternative, which is to make the raw material rather than buying it from outside sources, then to make the raw material, you will incur for the raw material cost of making that material, the labor cost, as well as the factory overhead. Supposing in terms of the overhead, so whether you buy it or you make it, the factory overhead cannot be avoided. It will still be incurred. However, the amount differs between the two options. So, with regards to your overhead, 1,000 pesos of the overhead can be saved in the buying alternative, which is not saved in the making alternative. So, in the making alternative, you incur the material costs, you incur the labor costs, and you incur also the overhead. I think it would be best if I will state a concrete amount involved. For example, in the making alternative, it will cost you 50,000 pesos to produce that material. Then the labor cost is, let us say, 70,000, and the overhead cost is 80,000. Gets niyo ang given? In the making alternative, ang direct material cost is 50,000, direct labor is 70,000, overhead is 80,000. So what's the total production cost in the making alternative? Ha? Pila tanan?
200,000.
200,000, miss.
200,000.
200,000.
Yes, that's the total production costs, 200,000. But in the buying alternative, do you need to spend for direct material cost of 50,000?
No, miss.
No. Do you need to pay for the direct labor cost of 70,000?
No, miss.
No, miss.
What about overhead? How much overhead will be spent in the buying alternative? Remember, overhead is not avoidable. It's not totally avoidable. Pila to'y amount ma-save in the buying alternative?
1,000.
1,000, miss.
10,000. So if you can save 10,000,
1,000.
how much overhead will be incurred in the buying alternative? How much overhead will you spend under the buying alternative? Sa making 80,000 man. Pero if you choose to buy from outside sources, then you can save 10,000. Therefore, pila man ang mas spend for overhead in the buying alternative?
70,000.
70,000.
1,000. Okay. Plus the purchase price, let us say the total purchase price would be 130,000. 130,000. So 130,000 sa total purchase price plus the overhead of 70,000. So you get a total cost under the buying alternative of
200.
100,000, miss.
Why?
100,000.
to make it, your total cost would be 200,000 also. So parihara. Therefore, you can choose either alternative, isn't it? So
Yes,
it's up
miss.
to
Yes,
you.
miss.
It's up to you to choose whether to buy or to make it internally. So parihara effect, kay parihara may cost involved. Assuming diha ra dapita ang difference between the two alternatives. Now, what if the total purchase price would be 100,000 and the overhead is 70,000 in the buying alternative? So, what cost is relevant that will influence you to choose which is the better alternative?
The purchase price, miss.
The purchase price is considered relevant cost in making your decision whether to buy from external source or to make it internally. While the irrelevant cost is the cost that can be avoided in choosing an alternative, isn't it? So with regards to factory overhead alone, do we consider 70,000 as the total relevant cost in the buying alternative?
No, miss.
No,
How
miss.
do we define relevant cost? Relevant cost is the
purchase price.
purchase price. Yes, because that is avoided in the other alternative. You can avoid it in the making alternative, which is not avoided in the buying alternative, isn't it?
Yes,
As to
miss.
factory overhead, pilay relevant cost involved? Pilay relevant cost involved? As far as
10,000.
overhead is concerned, is it 80,000? Is it 70,000 or the 10,000?
10,000, miss.
Only the 10,000 pesos. Because notice in your definition for relevant cost refers to the
Differential cost.
differential cost. And this differential cost is the cost, is the difference in cost between two or more alternatives. So it can represent either an increase or a decrease in cost. Therefore, in this example, it is the 10,000 pesos considered as relevant cost because that is the difference in terms of overhead between the two alternatives. The purchase price is also considered relevant cost because that is the amount avoided in the making alternative, which is not totally avoided in the buying alternative. So can you understand now the meaning of relevant costs?
Yes, miss.
Okay, next. So in the same example, the number of factory workers that will be hired, whether they make or whether they buy the raw material from outside sources, would be the same. In terms of sweldo, in terms of salaries, both alternatives will have salaries to be paid. And the amount of salaries to be paid will be the same in both alternatives. So is there a difference in terms of salaries between the two alternatives?
None, Miss.
None. Therefore, we consider salaries as irrelevant cost as far as the decision to make or to buy the raw material is concerned. Wala may difference. So it does not influence you as to which alternative is best. Because there's no difference, di ba? Wala may kalainan. So you will not know which option to take. Which alternative are you going to choose? Because as far as salaries is concerned, the same amount will be incurred, the same item will be spent by the company in both alternatives. So is that understood?
Yes, Miss.
Okay. Another example, yes. Opportunity
Yes, ma'am.
cost. Okay, what is the definition of opportunity cost? Cost of obtaining opportunities.
The revenue, Miss, that you lost by rejecting an alternative.
Okay, the lost revenue if you reject an alternative is an opportunity cost. That is correct. That is correct. For example, you as a student receives an offer from a call center to work with them, to work as a call center agent with a monthly salary of 20,000 pesos per month. That's the entry level salary in a call center. Does call center accepts undergraduate students? Mudawat ba ang call center o dili college graduate?
Yes, Miss.
Yes, they
Yes.
do. But the salary is lower than those who are hired na college graduates. Muhire man sila, pero lower lang yun ang rate sa wala pa ka-graduate o course compared to a college graduate. Okay, now, right now, you are currently enrolled this SEM in USC as a student, full-time student. But you receive an offer that will give you a monthly salary of 20,000 pesos from a call center. And they flexi time ilang ihatag sa imo. So you can still continue with your studies as a full-time student and then at the same time earning the monthly salary of 20,000 if you accept the job offer. So are you going to accept the offer?
Yes.
Yes? So grabe sad ka mo manage na sa imong time kay you have to devote time for your work and at the same time you devote time for your studies. So if you reject one offer, by the way, what are the options available here?
Accept or reject the offer.
Okay, either you accept the job offer or you reject the job offer. So if you reject one alternative, then you have an opportunity cost involved, isn't it?
Yes,
Yes.
miss.
Yes, miss.
If you do not accept the job offer, what will you what is your opportunity cost?
20K.
20,000.
20,000.
20,000 pesos is forgone if you reject the job offer, di ba? So that foregone income of 20,000 is your opportunity cost because you rejected the job offer. Di ba? So every time you choose, there is always an opportunity cost involved, isn't it? Every time you
Yes, miss.
choose, there is always an opportunity cost involved. Kay kung mo choose ka, of course, daghan kag kapilian. So kung mo pili ka naa kay gi-accept nga offer, naa kay gipili nga option or alternative, and at the same time naa sad kay gi-reject nga option or alternative. So now you know what is the opportunity cost if you reject an alternative or option. Di ba? Kung ang lalaki still in the stage of courting the girl, yeah, mabasted sa girl, what is the opportunity cost involved?
Kauyab.
Naawa.
Kauyab, miss. Siya
Oo.
kauyab.
Oy, dapat manguyab mo while you are still a student. Because that is also one way of knowing oneself.
No
Sabi
thanks,
ko
miss.
manguyab, unya nagmangango-ango na mo, magyango-yango na mo, di ba?
What if miss walay manguyab?
What if walay manguyab, kamoy manguyab? Bitaw.
Study first, miss.
Ano sa to?
Study first.
Study first, yes. So, depende ram gud na nimo gud unsay imong priorities in life. First priority ba imong studies? First priority ba ang pagpanguyab? First priority ba ang pagbarkada? And so on and so forth. Daghan kayong temptations karong mga panahon na. Daghan kayong options, daghan kayong alternatives. So the final decision rests with you. Di man namingon nga, di man ko pwede manguyab, ma'am, kay strict akong parents. Oh. Pwede manggudag, di ni mo pahibawon. Di makauyab ra ka gihapon kung gustuhan gyud ka nga manguyab, di ba?
Miss, ayaw mi tudloin, miss. Kay mautana mo parents, ingno na mo. Gitudlo man ni Miss Fornolies.
Talk time ko kasi
Thank you daw sa tips, miss.
beta. Mo na for me lang ha, personally, personal opinion lang. For me, I would advise you to have kanang a boyfriend or girlfriend while you are still in college. Ngano man? Because ang main reason diha is at least you know more about yourself. If you know how to handle a relationship, makahibaw mo unsay inyong kanang the bad and the good in you. You will be able to discover more about yourself and more also about the other person. Di ba? Pero if you are the type of person nga kapayason, what do you mean by kapayason?
Dali mahilak, miss.
Dali mo hila. Nganong kapayas man? Ang itawag. Nganong kapayason? From the word kapayas. Di ba when you prick the kapayas, di ba mura siya magluha? Mauna, mo nang tawag kapayason. So, if you are a very sensitive person, if you are not ready yet to handle a relationship, then do not go into it. Pero kung you have the time, no? Nga di sad ma-sacrifice lang ang inyong studies, why not? Di ba? Why not? There are some parents nga mura ra gyud sila managsuon sa ilang mga anak because they can understand you, no? Mutabang pamanggani, mo advice pamanggani kung angay ba nga himuon ang boyfriend o sa dili, no? Mas nindot kay nang ingon anang mga liberal-minded nga parents. Because they are behind you in whatever decision you'll take, no? At least muhatag silang advice nimo. But the final say is in you. Di ba? May giganahan, makarelate mo. Manguyab og accounting student, miss, para study together. Pwede sad. O, di ba? So, naamoy study, unsa ni? Kanang naamoy kadungan ug tuon. Nya hagbong together. O, at least naa kay kanang unsa na makasympathize dayon sa imuha, di ba? Oh. Nya dapat siya imong inspiration, dili perspiration. Mahimo ganing perspiration, hala buwag eh. Nganong magpabilin og antos, nganong yung mag-antos anang tawhana or bayhana, o di ba? Always be practical, always muna it's best gyud nga don't make it as a secret, no, nga relationship. At least naa kay barkada, kahibaw kay ninyo, or if possible sa inyong sibling, your brother or sister nga kanang open-minded bahin anang butanga, or kung ang imong parents open anang butanga, mas nindot pod, di ba? Nga akay ma-sharean ba? Lisod kay na you keep it to yourself. Monong daghan kay mo maghikog kay gibuwagan sa uyab, pastilan. Close-minded ra kaayo ka. Sus kadaghang lalaki, kadaghang babae dihang mapilian. It's not the end of the world yet. So do not end your life for that reason alone. Pagkaway ayo. Di ba? Kadaghang kakarsonis, kadaghan pa dihang ga shorts, gasinina. Oh. Pero ay lang sa kanang doble-doble o guyab kay gastos biya sad ning manguyab ta labi na on the part sa lalaki. But nowadays, kuan naman good na shared gastos naman na kung mag-date mo, kung mangaon mo. O karon ang mogasto ang lalaki, sunod ang babae na pod. Or pwede sad kay bilang sa kay student pa man. Oo. Ug manguyab mo guys, himuin ninyo unsa to? Himuin ninyo dagan kay ning kono react to makarelate jud dayon. Dito, even for my brothers, I would always tell them na kanang panguyab good. Ngano gutaw dili kamay ra ana, no? So even if I am the only girl in the family, I would welcome that idea of my brothers looking for a girlfriend katong bata pa sila. Oh, nindot kay nang ingon ana. Okay, nganong naabot ta diha? Uy, balik ta sa atong discussion. So now you understand what is an opportunity cost. Who has more of this opportunity cost? Men or we men? Who has more of this opportunity cost? Is it men or we men?
Women.
Women has more of this opportunity cost?
Okay, sila may ni-reject sa manguyab.
Agree mo guys? Pero unsa man na nga kanang times have changed. Di naman lalaki ang manguyab, ang babae naman. So parehas ra.
Both.
Ano to?
Both na miss, both. Kaya parehas
Hmm.
naman manguyab.
Okay, parehas ng manguyab, no? Pero if you still follow the traditional practice, what society expects from you, society expects that ang laki dyan ang manguyab, no? Yeah, daghan sa laki, di kaingon. Maglisod, magsulti. Di ba? Bisan pagitagaan, paghigayon sa babae. Wag hapon kasabot, wag hapon ka gets. Saon na lang. Ripong laki. Instead nga ang babae. Bad idea, no? So, di lang pod, ana. You wait for your turn. Planuhon gyud na how you're going to express yourself. Makita man ang muagi sa mo ka ng amigo, amiga, para makadiscover gyud mo for each other kung may bagyod, di ba? Ang nindot man gud anang sa relationship kung you started as friends, then finally you become close friends. Then sa the more nga intimate in your relationship, hangtod mo abot nga magkauyab gyud. Di ba? But for now, first priority sa natong studies, labi na kay dili diya kita ga-spend sa atong studies, no? It's our parents. Nag-antos in town sila for your future. But for the parents also, that's part of their investment. So kung investment na siya, na ay return ang investment. So they're preparing for your future because someday kamo na sad ang mo take care sa inyong parents when they retired already from work. Wala sila trabaho, then kamo na say mo buhi nila, kamo na say mo take care nila. Di ba? Wala mo tingog. Okay, so now we'll go to the first exercise in chapter 1. Kindly get your book. Daghan ra ba gihapon in this group nga walay book?
Small lang, miss, like mga 2 lang, miss, I think, or 1 ra. Okay, for our
Okay.
group, miss, all of us, almost all of us have a book na, miss.
Very good. Kay kuan
Yes,
good
miss.
mo, accounting major na biya mo. Mingon ya man, basic accounting ra man gud ning cost accounting, pwede ra na Y libro. Sige, tanaw na tog makasustener bagyo da nga Y libro hay. Oh. Okay, sige. Exercise number 1. Crossword puzzle na, no? Ang number 1.
Yes,
Yes,
miss.
miss.
Sige, let me see. Kinsay gi-assign na ni ang cluster 1, Joshua?
No, miss, it's cluster 4, miss.
Cluster 4. Nagkuan mo? Sana?
Randomizer, miss, nag-spin lang may wheel, miss, for dividing the tasks.
Okay, beta, aron way mahay no. Sige, may we ask cluster 4 to present your answer on the screen, please?
Yes, miss. I'll present my screen, miss, and then they'll be the ones to discuss.
Okay. Gi-record ni ang atong discussion ron, Joshua?
Yes, miss. Yes, miss. Since a while ago pa, miss.
Oo. Sige. Kinsay mo discuss. Feel free to discuss your answers. Mutingog ra ko basta di mao ha.
Yes, miss. Oh, extra. Wait, where are my group mates? Like, hi guys, are you there? Paramdam mo na ko, please. Don't go me.
Sige.
Present. Miss, kasuway
Una-
na ba ko nung kagi-ghost?
Guys,
Sige, across na across. Number 2,
sige,
what
so
is
I'll
the
start na lang, miss, for the across.
correct. Costs of capital. Sige, niya ang number 5 step. 5 is
Number 5 is step.
okay, correct. Number 7.
Number 7 is
Number 7 is indirect.
Indirect. Gatanaw bitaw ko puzzle pa class ha ug ang number tempa. Number 7 across indirect, correct. Then number 9.
Number 9, Miss, is
Number 9,
historical.
historical.
Number 9 is historical. Correct. Number 13 is
13 is volume, Miss.
correct. Volume. Number 14 is
Differential.
okay. Differential. Correct. Number 15.
Mix.
16 is Miss. Mixed.
Correct. Number 16.
CGM. Miss.
So, 2 times
Yeah,
16
miss.
GM. Sige, 16. Correct. Okay, next is 18.
Period, miss.
Okay, then 19 is
Conversion.
Conversion, miss.
correct, conversion. Okay, downwards. So number 1 is
Marginal. Miss.
margin.
Marginal, miss.
Yeah, number 1 is marginal. Sa plus 1, okay? Marginal. Yes. Then number 2,
Cost accounting, miss.
downward. Okay. Cost accounting, correct. Number 3,
Step.
step.
Miss. Again, miss.
Okay, yes. Downward, no step. Then number 4,
Traceability, miss.
traceability. Okay, traceability. Next, number 6, high.
High-low, miss.
Then number 8,
Expenses.
Expenses.
number 10,
Staff service.
staff
Staff
service.
service.
Then 11,
Order
order
getting.
getting. Number 12,
Avoidable.
avoidable. And
Avoidable.
17,
Prime.
Prime.
yes, prime. Any questions, class? Gets niyo ang answers nila? Okay, next. We go
Yes,
to
miss.
next exercise. 1-2. Still sa cluster 4, no? Sige. Your answer to number 1 is direct materials.
Direct
Correct.
material.
Number 2 is you have to know first what kind of business are they operating. And then take note of the functions of each of their personnel so that you will be guided in classifying the costs that will be incurred by them. So they're producing hamburger. So we consider the hamburger meat as direct material cost. Number 2, the answer is also direct materials. So with number 3 and 4, direct materials. But for number 5, other ingredients, kay minimal raman na ang consumption sa other ingredients. That's why you consider it as part of overhead. Number 6, your answer is direct labor cost because ang wages sa cooks, sa tigluto, is considered direct labor costs. While in number 7, you consider it as overhead costs ang supervisor's salary because that is an indirect labor cost. Because the work of the supervisor is not directly traced to the finished product. No? It's a common costs incurred regardless of whether the product is considered the main product or not. Number 8, you answered overhead. Wait. Number 8. Number 7 is server's wages, no? So that's overhead. Why? Kay indirect labor cost man. Supervisor's salary. Who is the supervisor in this case? Kinsay ga supervise sa burger house? It's Adiye, the owner himself, di ba?
Yes, miss.
Actually, the manager,
Yes, miss.
the supervisor at the same time. So his salaries will not be associated directly to production or to the finished product. Therefore, that should not be part of production cost, ang salary ni Adiye, but it should be part of selling and administrative expenses. Is that understood?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Then number 9, utilities. Utilities, unsay answer ninyo? Kanang water and electricity. That's part of utilities.
Selling and administrative expenses, miss.
Selling and admin expense. Utilities man, charge na ninyo. Oy, kay kanang magluto ta, kanang mag-prepare sila silang product, a greater part of the utility cost is charged to production. Therefore, you will have it as part of your production cost, as part of overhead. No? As part of overhead na. Then number 10, the depreciation for cooking equipment. That should be reported as part of overhead. Kay cooking equipment man. No? So sa number 11, depreciation sa cash register, ayaw sa overhead. Ngano man? Kay wa naman na sa production ang work ni wait. The depreciation for the cash register, bayad diha naman ang mo-accept sa bayad sa customer. So ayaw sa i-relate sa production of the burger. It should be a non-production cost, therefore part of selling and
Selling and administrative expenses.
okay, selling and admin expense. Di man gud ta mo gamit og cash register dito sa kitchen, which is the production area. Number 12, advertising. Kana, that is part of selling and admin expense. Number 13, janitor's wages. Usara may ilang janitor. So dili siya directly associated lang sa kitchen. Kay manglimpyo man sad siya dito sa area sa customer. So tanan nga areas iyang limpyuhan. So that should be charged to selling and administrative expense. Gawas kung janitor siya assigned in the kitchen, they can charge it to overhead. Pero kay tanan man na nga areas, yang iyang gibutang, wa man gibutang diri nga ang janitor assigned siya sa kitchen nga area. So number 13 should be salaries, should be selling and administrative expense. 14, janitorial supplies. You answered overhead. O janitorial supplies, kanang gamito ni janitor nga supplies. Ayo i-charge sa kitchen, sa production. Therefore, it should not be overhead, but it should be selling and admin expenses. Number 15, rent. Bayad sa pag-abang sa building for the burger house. Charge it to selling and admin expenses. Gets niyo?
Yes, miss.
Okay, learn from your mistakes and avoid
Excuse me, miss.
mistakes again. Yes.
I have a question, miss. So
Okay.
if there's two janitors, miss, one is for the kitchen and the other one is for the building, then they'll both
Duha
be
din ni
different,
ka
miss.
janitors?
No, miss. Like if ba, like hypothetically, miss, like there's a
Ah,
situation with
okay.
two different sila, miss. One will be overhead, the other one will be selling and administrative.
Yes.
Okay, miss. Thank you, miss. So it depends na, miss, on the location where they're
Kung
assigned
asa
to.
siya gi-assign. So kung nasa
Okay, miss.
production area ra gyud, part na siya sa indirect cost sa plant or production area. Pero kung naara siya sa administrative nga offices, then charge it to general and admin expense.
Okay, miss. Thank you, miss.
Okay, separate man gud ang payroll sa factory. Separate sad ang payroll sa office. Mo nang i-allocate nimo ang sweldo sa katong na-assign nga mga personnel sa production area, ang tanang indirect cost diha, you charge it to overhead. But for the non-office areas, charge it to general and admin expense. Anyway, later on, kung unsay cost incurred sa non-production area, that will soon be gi-include gihapon na in allocating the cost to the production areas. Namang gud tay kuan allocation of service department costs. So ang overhead sa non-production areas i-assign gihapon na to the production area, part of the total cost incurred by the department, whose cost will also be assigned to the product that they produce. So ang product nga ga-produce, ang product nga gi-produce sa company will have a fair share of the allocation of the overhead coming from the non-production areas. Manang i-charge gid nimo pila gid di ay tanan cost sa pag-produce ani nga product. So not just only the production cost, but also to include the fair share of the overhead from the non-production areas. Kaya ang non-production areas, di man sila income generating. Most often, cost centers na sila. Ano? They will be incurring costs and expenses. So wala sila income directly earned by such segment. Mauna nga there is an allocated share of their overhead assigned to the product. Gets niyo?
Yes, miss.
Anyway, you will know it later as we go along. When we reach the chapter about accounting for factory overhead, there you will know that the overhead in the service departments, that's the non-production departments, will be allocated or distributed also to the production department in getting how much the total overhead is incurred by each producing department. Kaya ang total overhead ni producing department, including the allocated share from the other departments, will be divided by the cost driver, the one that drives overhead to be incurred, para you will know what is the overhead rate assigned to that specific producing department, which later on is assigned to the product that they produce. Any other questions? Kining cost classification requires familiarization in terms of the product the company produces, the department to where you are assigned, and the cost where the said item is incurred. Para you will know what is the proper treatment of such cost. Is it direct cost or indirect cost? Is it relevant or not? Is it part of product costs or not? Okay, that's why cost classification is very important. No? Kay maka-affect man sad na in computing the bottom line, no? Your profit or loss. Okay, what if your own judgment tells you that you can justify treating this cost item as a period cost rather than a product cost. So that might affect the calculation of the production cost per unit produced. That might affect the calculation how much is the profit generated from operations, and so on and so forth. So as accountant, you should know why you consider that item, why it is recorded using this account, why consider it as part of production costs or not. Kaya dili man na yung accountant ko to bra mag-compute, na? You will be asked to justify, why is this classified as such? O accountant man ka, so unsa man ang proper treatment ani? O, see? Mo nang taas kay kanang respect ang society sa mga accountants, because aside from being skeptical, no, they're considered as the watchdog of the company, no, they are considered as the expert in line with the company's recording function, an expert also in line with finance. That is why most companies prefer their finance manager to be an accountant. Kadaghanan gyud sa mga finance managers or CPAs. Although naasay companies ng finance manager is not an accountant because of his work experience as a finance manager in other companies. That's why they are being considered for such position, no? So even if you are not a CPA, but because of your work orientation, you have been working in a finance company, you have been working as a finance manager, and so on and so forth, that's why you are being hired as the finance officer or the finance manager or the VP finance. But you will realize also that in most companies, big companies, their finance managers are CPAs, because we're dealing with numbers, we're dealing with money, no? So they expect us to be an expert in the field of finance. For me, class, between accounting and finance, mas interesting biyang finance nga field. Mas interesting siya kaysa accounting itself. Kapoy man kung sa accounting no work. Anyway, you will be able to relate this when you will be joining the workforce, when you will be working already. Okay, any other questions? Dandra, did you understand our discussion?
Miss, I
Yes,
have a
Miss. Hi, Riasha has a question, Miss.
Sige. Okay, Rish.
Miss, clarification lang sa rent. Miss, if ever ang rent is separate siya, Miss, sa where ibaligya ang product, Miss, is it overhead? Let's say, for example,
Regardless kung asa ibaligya, regardless asa ibaligya ang product, the rental is based on what is agreed upon between the lessor and the lessee. So ang rent contract will be signed by the lessee. So ang rental ana normally or generally is charged to general and administrative expenses. Pero kung if the factory or the plant is located in another location and the main office is located also in another location, so posible nga ang office, ang admin nga building girentahan, ang factory or the warehouse is in a separate location is also rented, then pwede man nga the factory rental will be charged to overhead, while the rental sa office, sa admin nga building, will be charged to general and administrative expenses. Pero there are some companies also, class, kung usaray tag-iya. Usaray kanabang usaray tag-iya sa building nga girentahan, no? They would rather the owner would rather charge it only once under general and admin expenses. Pero ang ato man good, there should be proper allocation of an expense to the product that they produce. Since ang factory is directly involved in the making of the product, so that is an indirect cost of making the product, but only as far as the rental of the plant or the factory is concerned. Dili appeal ang sa admin nga building. Did you get my point?
Yes, Miss.
Any other questions? None? You still have a class after this?
No na, miss. We don't have a synchronous after this.
Okay. Sige, last one. Exercise 1-3. True or false, Ramana? Still cluster 4, na? 3 exercises, Mano, for every cluster.
Yes, miss.
Okay. What are the numbers where you answered W for false statements? Numbers with false nga answer. Or W nga answer for the false statements. Number, tingog sad mo diha, oy. Kindly read the numbers with W or false statements. Sa taas. Go up.
I type po, miss. I think it's
You
these
have
ones, miss.
number 1,
1, 3,
11,
11, 13, 14, and then 18.
1, 3, 11. Say sunod?
13 and 14.
13, 14,
Then 18, miss.
then 18. That's all?
Yes, miss.
Okay. Number 13 is not a false statement. The cost of operating finished goods warehouse is classified as warehouse, as a selling cost. Cost to sell man, part of the cost to sell. That is true. For storage namang good na, di man na production ang sa warehouse. So statement number 13 is true. Then, okay, what else? Aside from, next number after 13 nga false?
14, 14 and 18.
Okay, correct. Then 15 is false.
No, miss. 18 na.
18 is false.
Yes,
What
miss.
about 16? Why consider it true? Look at number 16. Joshua Bingan? Sa world's first cost.
It's Hosea, miss, or Hosea?
So that is false. It's Josiah, not Joshua. Diba? So number 16 is false. So you can, you'll have to answer W for number 16. So again, numbers with false statements are 1, 3, 11, 14, 16,
18.
and 18. 18. Any questions, class? Yes, Joshua?
Miss, I just want to clarify, Miss, pero if ever, Miss, it's specified ba na utilities is sa office, utilities of the office, then it's selling and administrative expenses.
Kung, ano sa to?
If office utilities, Miss, ba, specified siya as office utilities,
Ana good ang
then it's,
office good. So not related.
so selling na, Miss.
So that should be selling and admin expenses.
Okay, Miss, thank you, Miss.
Any other questions? So we will continue. So we're done with cluster 4 na, no? So next cluster is unsa kinsay next, Joshua, sa exercise. dash-
Ano siya na kuan, Miss, it's different siya, Miss. The one for exercise 3 was cluster 5, Miss. So the different clusters kay they have different, Miss, like dili siya arranged, Miss.
Dili arrange nga nung inana man.
Ay randomize na mo, Miss. Amo lang gi-random.
Nag-wheel of
cluster.
misfortune.
Will of
Yes, Miss.
will of me.
Para ma-divide din, Miss.
Oh. Okay. Sige. So take note of the corrections, ha?
Yes, Miss.
Sige. So we'll continue with this one next. Please share the recorded discussion to the other groups. So sa
Yes, Miss.
next group, sa 4:30 to 6 nga class, mo continue me with exercise 1-4. So they will share the recorded discussion today with all the other groups. Appeal na mo nga ma-sharean sa ilang discussion. So Joshua, don't forget to share the link for the recorded discussion to the other groups through our GC.
Yes, Miss, of
Okay.
course, Miss. And then, Miss, can I also ask, Miss, since we were unable to see the PowerPoint a while ago, Miss, can you send it to us, Miss, so we can check what you were discussing a while ago with the PowerPoint?
Sige.
Thank you, Miss.
Any other questions? None? Okay. Thank you for joining this session. Bye.
Thank you and
Thank you,
goodbye,
Miss.
Miss.
Bye, thank you, miss.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, miss.